My Days in England, Part 1. I am now going back in time to a period when I was caught between East and West and had to make up my mind just where I belonged. I had been away from India for barely a month before I was longing to return. The insularity of the place where I found myself, that is, Jersey in the Channel Islands, had something to do with it, I suppose. There was little there to remind me of India or the East, not one brown face to be seen in the streets or on the beaches. I am sure it is a different sort of place now, but 50 years ago it had nothing to offer by way of companionship or good cheer to a lonely, sensitive boy who had left home and friends in search of a better future. I had come to England with a dream of sorts, and I was to return to India with another kind of dream, but in between there were to be 4 years of dreary office work, lonely bed sitting rooms, shabby lodging houses, cheap snack bars, hospital, and the struggle to write my first book and find a publisher for it. I started work in a large departmental store called Lee Ritchie. At 8 in the morning, when I walked to the store, it was dark. At 6 in the evening, when I walked home, it was again dark. Where were all those sunny beaches Jersey was famous for? I would have to wait for summer to see them and a Saturday afternoon to take a dip in the sea. Occasionally, after an early supper, I would walk along the deserted seafront. If the tide was in and the wind approaching gale force, the waves would climb the seawall and drench me with their cold salt spray. My aunt, with whom I was staying, thought I was quite mad to take this solitary walk, but I have always been at one with nature, even in its wilder moments, and the wind and the crashing waves gave me a sense of freedom, strengthened my determination to escape from the island and go my own way. When I wasn't walking along the seafront, I would sit at the portable typewriter in my small attic room and hammer out the rough chapters of the book that was to become my first novel. These were characters and incidents based on the journal I had kept during my last years in India. It was 1951, recalled in late 1952. An 18-year-old looking back on incidents in the life of 17-year-old. Nostalgia and longing suffused those pages. How I longed to be back with my friends in the small town of Dehradun, a leafy place, sunny, fruit laden, easy going, every familiar corner etched clearly in my memory. Somehow, it had been the last year in Dehra that had brought me closer to India that I had so far only taken for granted. An India of close and sometimes sentimental friendships, of striking contrasts, a small cinema showing English pictures and only a couple of hours away, thousands taking a dip in the sacred water of Ganga, or outside the station, hundreds of pony drawn tongas waiting to pick up passengers, while the more affluent climbed into their Ford convertibles, Morris Minors, Baby Austins, or flashy Packards and Daimlers. But, of course, Dehra in the 50s was a town of bicycles. Students, shopkeepers, army cadets, office workers all used them. The scooter or Lambretta had only just been invented, and it would be several years before it took over from the bicycle. It was still unaffordable for the great majority. I was awkward on bicycle and frequently fell off, breaking my arm on one occasion. But this did not prevent me from joining my friends on cycle rides to the Sulphur Springs or to Prem Nagar, where the military academy was situated, or along the Hardwar road and down to the riverbed at Lachwala. In Jersey, I found an old cycle belonging to my cousin, and I rode from St. Helier, where we lived, to St. Brillet's Bay at the other end of the island. But returning after dark, I was hauled up for riding without lights. I had no idea that bicycles had also to be equipped with lights. Back in Dehra, we never used them. The attic room had no view, so one of my favorite occupations, gazing out of window, came to a stop. But perhaps this was helpful in that it made me concentrate on the sheet of paper in my typewriter. After about 6 months, I had a book of sorts ready for submission to any publisher who was prepared to look at it. Meanwhile, I had been through at least 3 jobs and had even been offered a post in the Jersey Civil Service, having successfully taken the local civil service exam, something I had done out of sheer boredom, as I had no intention of settling permanently on the island. I had been keeping a diary of sorts, and in some of the entries, I had expressed my desire to get back to India and my discontent at having to stay with relatives who were unsympathetic not only to my feelings for India but also to my ambitions to become a writer. The diary fell into my uncle's hands. He read it and was naturally upset. We had a row. I was contrite, but a few days later I packed my suitcase, all 2 of them, and stepped onto the ferry that was to take me to Southampton and then to London. Lesson 1. Don't leave your personal diaries lying around. Thank you very much for listening. Now, some of the words used in the above passage and their meanings. I had been away from India for barely a month before I was longing to return. The insularity of the place where I found myself, that is, Jersey in the Channel Islands, had something to do with it. Insulatory, Insulatory. Insulatory means lack of interest in culture, ideas, or people outside one's own experience. I had come to England with a dream of sorts, and I was to return to India with another kind of dream. But in between, there were to be 4 years of dreary office work. Dreary, Dreary. Dreary means depressingly dull. An 18-year-old looking back on incidents in the life of 17-year-old. Nostalgia and longing suffused those pages. Suffuse, SUFFUSE. Suffuse means gradually spread through. In Jersey, I found an old cycle belonging to my cousin, and I rode from St. Helier, where we lived, to St. Brillet's Bay at the other end of the island. But returning after dark, I was hauled up for riding without lights. Haul up. HAUL. Haul. Haul someone up means to force someone to answer questions about their behavior, etc. The diary fell into my uncle's hands. He read it and was naturally upset. We had a row. Row means ROW. Row means a noisy argument or fight. I was contrite. Contrite. CONTRATE. Contrite means feeling very sorry and guilty for something bad that you have done. Thank you very much.